recording to the cloud. So again, welcome everyone. Welcome to Club Officer Training, night number 7. Tonight is all about club treasurers. I welcome you to Club Officer Training for club treasurers. Welcome everybody, one and all. My name is Scott Brown. I am the Program Quality Director here for District 11. It looks like Tim Johnson's not going to be able to make it tonight, so we're going to go through and do this by ourselves anyway. So just by show of hands, a couple questions for you first. How many of you are first-time club treasurers this term? Meaning that at the change of the year and around Christmas time, your club treasurer bowed out and you ended up taking over. A couple of you. I see a few hands up. A few hands just went down. So we have a couple that are just taking over. The rest of you that had your hands up, did you start back in the spring and this is your first full year? I see a couple head nods in there also. Very good. Well, we're going to try to go through and give you a nice little background of what the club treasurer does, some things that will change once we get out of the pandemic, and some things that we have to do during the pandemic when we are physically separated and unable to meet in person. We're going to talk a little bit about what the treasurer role does, the importance it plays within all of our clubs, and some things that you all have learned over time. So let me start here by finding the slideshow. By finding the slideshow. If I do that, it can't show up over there. Very nice. All right. Club treasurer. So there's a training that Toastmasters International puts together that they want us, there's some specific things that they want us to talk about when it comes to being a club treasurer. So just a couple things we're going to go through tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the treasurer role. We're going to talk about responsibilities that the treasurer has and also some resources that the treasurer has. Because there are definitely some resources out there that make your life just a little bit easier. We're going to help you identify what your role is within the club, find those resources that help, and help you find some responsibilities. So first of all, let me ask you this question. For those of you who were club treasurer last year, how different is being a club treasurer this year compared to what it was last year? So 2020 compared to 2019 year. What are some things that you've noticed that you had to do differently as we've gone through this year of quarantine or the year that wasn't? And how has that role changed for you over the past year? Feel free to unmute yourself. We'd love to hear some of your responses on what has changed for you.
It got easier for me because I was able to go to a online payment system and be able to pull payments that way.
So talk about that. What kind of online payment system did you use, David?
It was part of my move away from using QuickBooks. So initially I'd been using QuickBooks and there was concerns that other people didn't know it. So I moved the accounting off to Wave app, and they have a they have an online payment portal too. So I set that up and used that to collect dues, and it made it a lot easier than it would have been in previous years.
Very nice. Did you use invoices when you made the switch to make it easier also, or no? Yes.
Yeah. It has invoices built into it, and it actually helps with the accounting with it too. So I was able to push those out. It even had automated reminders, so I didn't have to chase after people. It just kind of did it for me, and in the end, most people renewed. The ones that didn't were the ones that we kept following up with, and unfortunately, not all of them renewed. But
okay,
it is what it is.
Very nice. Thank you, Jerry. What about you? What changed?
Well, actually, I just wanted to ask David a question about that app that he mentioned.
Go for it.
Could you state the name of that app again, please?
I think it's Wave app, waveapp.com. It's a free online accounting app that ties into your bank account. Can you throw that into
chat for everybody?
Yeah, sure.
And David,
thank you very much.
That allows your members to make payments to you for their membership, and then you make a single payment to Toastmaster International?
Yes.
Excellent. I like that idea.
Fantastic. Thank you. What else? What else has changed this year for the club treasurer role as you moved from from face to face to online? What else has changed? There's one other huge thing that has changed this year for all of the club treasurers.
That was interesting. This is Ed Scarbeck for payments. One of the things they started using is a lot of our members, basically all of them, have bill pay. So I've asked them to submit their payments to our club via their bill pay account. Because when I did research on credit cards and on anything else, that was way more expensive than what we would bring in any club dues over the year.
And which bill and you use them, are you using bill pay through the bank?
Yep, they're individual bill pay people have for paying their bills monthly. And what I do is I send out a notice in early March. Dues are due, and submit your payment for X amount, and then they do, and I get the checks, and then I deposit them, and then pay to Toastmasters International.
Very cool. Very nice. Thank you.
I used actually Venmo. So what I did was I posted on our club, our private Facebook post and I scheduled the post to go out so I didn't have to keep dealing with it. And I gave them my Venmo, my Cash App, my phone number. If they wanted to call me, they could have made the payment, and then I just entered it right away. And I tell you what, they love the Venmo thing that we did. And then, at that point, you just really had a few stragglers and you didn't have to call that many, and it just kind of worked out.
Fantastic. And Victoria, can you put those into the chat also so everybody can see what Venmo and the Cash App?
I was going to add that I kind of did the same thing with the option to pay by bill pay, but the credit card payment bit was, they do charge if I remember right, it's a 2.5% or 3% fee, which I made them pay that in a convenience fee when they paid their dues if they were going that route.
Very nice.
I looked into those and they all had fees, and Venmo was free, and since I have a Venmo card, so all I did was collected their fees, and then I just went in and did the payments.
Outstanding. And Ginger, I see you put in there, you use Zelle. How did Zelle work for you?
It worked fantastic. It was free through our banks, and those people that have tech-savvy bank account kind of situations, it was fantastic. It just automatically appeared in my account, and it even had their name associated with it, so it made tracking fantastic. Very
nice. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm in a club that uses Zelle in Florida, and it works incredibly well. Matt, what about you?
I have a question. So whenever you use Zelle or Venmo or Cash App, do you use those in your personal name and then just have it go to you personally, and then you make the payment on behalf of your member? Or do you use those in the name of your club? Because I've been trying to just do everything in the name of my club, because I really don't want to personally hold anyone's money other than just depositing it in the bank. But how do those work?
Yeah, I did do it. I did mine personally, and then I just went and made the payment to the bank. I hadn't really checked to see if I could. I don't know. I know Cash App. I don't think that does business. I don't know about Venmo, but that's something would definitely be worth checking into. And so
I know Zelle won't with business accounts. That's something I had looked into, was trying to do it with Zelle.
Yeah, and my bank does something called not my bank, but the club's bank has something called Pop Money, and I was like, I'm not doing all that. So
Okay.
I didn't set that up.
So Matt, the one thing I've seen that I have seen a number of treasurers do is the ones that use the online apps like this, they actually set up separate accounts for themselves. So instead of having just one account for you through Venmo, they set up a separate account that their name would be Matt Stevenson Treasurer.
Okay.
Or Matt Treasurer Stevenson, whatever, so that they can keep that separated, and they send that information out to their clubs. So they're not worried about mixing money. They know that the payments go straight into the treasurer account, and you don't have to worry about, well, who did I get what from, that sort of a way. kind of the same way that people always have ghost accounts for social media. They just got creative and created a secondary account for themselves in some of those apps. And that seems to have eliminated some of those fears that folks have had about using that online. So I hope that helps a little bit also. When it comes to corporate clubs, what's changed when it comes to a corporate club in terms of being able to gather around? How many of you have corporate clubs? First of all, I guess that's the first question here. One. Thomas, it looks like you're the only hand raising that has a corporate club.
Yeah,
How's it changed for you?
I call it a sort of corporate club because it's
Okay.
actually a university club. So we're a student club, but I'm just the figurehead of the treasurer. Everything goes through the dean's office. So I actually don't have to really do anything except make sure that the students fill out their applications. But
Okay.
it's that we have the university pays all that, does all the stuff.
Are you at Notre Dame or Kelly?
I'm at University of Southern Indiana, man.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, we have 4 or
There are
5 different
11 other Indiana universities, you know.
we have 4 or 5 different clubs that are associated with universities. They were the first 2 I thought of. So very nice. If you have a corporate club, or if you end up helping out a corporate club, there's a different process that most corporations follow for this. And they want them to be invoiced and they want to pay all at once if they're the one sponsoring the club. It takes a lot more time now to get that approved, which is why we lost so many corporate clubs that are no longer in good standing this year. There are a lot of companies out there that said, we'd rather stay in business than invest in a third party type of training. We want to make sure that we can keep our trainers employed, sort of a thing. So if you are helping, or if you are out there in a corporate club and just didn't want to say so, please start getting hold of your accounting department, your HR department, whoever your point of contact is within that corporate club. It's going to take you a couple of months this time to be able to get paid for that. We certainly ran into that with some corporate clubs here in Fort Wayne last year. That it took a long time to be able to get that money processed and through, and it was down to the very last minute to get that to finally get paid. So start early and start often. The one other thing I've noticed that every club has changed. How easy was it before to be able to remind somebody that they needed to pay dues? There is something about standing in front of someone and saying, bring out your checkbook, pull out your credit card, give us some cash, that when you stand there with your hands out, like the Allstate guy, it's a little bit easier sometimes to be able to help to ensure that the folks pay you. We don't have that now. There is a club that I help once in a while that I'm not a member of, but I help them. They're one of the Florida clubs. And I found this to be unique. As soon as the treasurer started talking about dues, all of a sudden, all these images started going away to screenshots. Folks turned off their cameras because all of a sudden it becomes easier to avoid the conversation if nobody can see you trying to avoid you in the first place. So know that if you have some folks out there that are resistant, we have a lot of life change type situations. A lot of folks have lost jobs. A lot of folks are in career transitions right now. Give them some time. Keep on them and remind them on a regular basis, and not just that they have to pay dues, but why they're paying dues. Why is it that they're a member of Toastmasters? Why is it that they joined, they're participating? What are they getting from it? Where are they trying to go? If you focus on the why instead of the $45 plus whatever it is for your club dues, the why can help entice folks to stay members and stay engaged a little bit better. But yes, the dues do matter, absolutely. And then sometimes, I know this is a personal case here. If you have club dues, it can sometimes be hard when you have members that you don't see very often that keep forgetting to pay club dues. So remind them that they need to pay club dues. My club treasurer for one of my clubs is sitting in the exact middle of my screen right here. She is in the Alice Square right now. And I know that I owe her club dues for at least 2 terms now. So if you have those folks, oftentimes it's because you pay the $45 one way, but you have to pay the club dues another way. Remind them, keep on them. They probably aren't meaning to not pay you. They just don't think about it because they paid dues and completely forgot, and you're not there physically to remind them. So thoughts on that? Are you having more trouble with club dues, or is that something that you were able to transition pretty well with? I think we're okay on club dues then, because nobody has said a word, so that's okay.
I'll say in my club, it's a little bit of a hassle. Our
Okay.
club dues are $1 a month. So whenever someone renews, it's $45 plus $1 per month. So it's $51 total. So yeah, it is kind of a pain because some, people could go on, I guess, and maybe pay their own dues, but they'll usually just write me a check for 51.
Very cool. We're going to talk
will
about
be
that
doing
last
the-
point.
I will be doing the Venmo though, because I'm going to just make a Venmo treasurer account because I have a lot of our members that would like to go to that, have an option just to do that. Because in our world today, that's very common. I'm old school. I still have a checkbook, but a lot of people don't even have checkbooks anymore. So, so I need to adapt.
Very cool. And we're going to talk about how members are going to be paying dues in the future, because that's about to change in the next year. And we'll talk about that in a minute here. So there are a couple things that treasurers can certainly impact within our clubs. How many of you had meeting spaces where you had to pay for the meeting spaces previously? Anybody in contract somewhere that you had to? I see Victoria's hand up. Anybody out there with meeting spaces that you were locked in a contract, you still had to pay, or were you able to get out of those contracts when everything got shut down? Victoria, what about you?
Yeah, we were able to not have to pay because we were in a church building
Okay.
downstairs. So we didn't have to worry about paying the church
Very nice.
during a shutdown.
Very good. So there's going to be a little bit of a change coming up here, I imagine, in the next 6 months. And that's that where a lot of us have met previously are not going to be available to us for a number of reasons. I'm a member of Smoky Montgomery here in Fort Wayne. We met in the basement of a hospital. Not only is that probably not going to be available to us, it's probably not all that smart to be taking a bunch of people into a hospital to go to a meeting. That's probably not the wisest thing to even consider doing in the first place. We're going to have to find a new place to meet. For-profit locations like community centers are the first ones that are starting to open up because they have a fee associated with that, and they're making money off of outside groups coming to meet there. There are some libraries that charge fees in order to meet there as well. Those places that have for-profit payments that they require from outside groups, if you have a club that's looking for a place to meet, work with your club president, work with your officers, make sure they know what kind of money they have available. And you may need to end up changing your dues structure for a club dues in order to be able to afford a place if you're trying to go back and meet in person. The same holds true that if you're going to end up going to your own Zoom, because the district Zoom accounts, because of Toastmasters International's requirements, the district Zoom accounts are going to end up going away the end of February, beginning of March sometime. Toastmasters International is adamant that they do not want to be involved in where clubs meet. They don't want to be involved in specific club business. The same reason that they don't want to get involved in the contracts if you meet at a library, I mean, if you meet at a restaurant, if you meet at a hotel, if you meet at a church, whatever it is, they don't want to be involved in that. And they don't want to be involved in the Zoom thing either. So from a cost standpoint, there's going to be a lot of clubs out there needing to acquire a Zoom account for $14 a month, $15 a month. You're going to have to work with your officers to make sure that there's some sort of way to be able to pay that. And it's not just coming out of one individual's pocket on a regular basis. So know that's a cost that will be coming up for every club, but it's something that, especially if we're going to go hybrid, will probably be here for a while. So how many of you have gone out and gotten your own Zoom accounts? A couple? Okay. How's it working for you? Rodney, how's that working for you with your own Zoom accounts?
It's really working quite well. I use my Zoom account for a Kiwanis Club meeting. We have about 45 to 50 people every meeting. And one of our other members, Mike Herkzoff, who in fact is our VP of Education, he has his own Zoom account for consulting. So he's does he invite for Toastmasters. And I think it's working very well. Jerry Hogue might be able to confirm that, but I think it's working quite well. Very pleased with it.
Very good.
I do have a question in that regard. I mean, everybody tends to use Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody been using Google Meet?
The one that I hear most often outside of Zoom is Microsoft Teams.
We tried GoToMeeting, but kind of went back to Zoom.
I've tried Google Meets before and I like Zoom better.
Well, for our context, the nice thing about Zoom is that it lets you see everyone.
Okay.
This is
Microsoft Teams over the past
Tracy.
few months has really upped their game, that they've met a lot of the same criteria that Zoom has had. They've developed a lot more, and Microsoft Teams is really working well for a number of places. And it seems to be a little bit safer when it comes to unwanted guests popping in as well. It seems to be a little bit better with that. I'm so sorry. I talked over somebody. I did not mean to. We kind of started at the same time. I don't know who that was.
That's okay. It's Tracy with Metro Motivators.
Yes.
When did you say that we would have to acquire our own Zoom account again?
End of February, beginning of March. So we are going to
Okay.
keep those accounts open through contest season. We wanted to give everybody at least through contest season to not have to worry about going to find your own accounts. Gene and I get emails on a pretty regular basis, like usually about once a week, once every other week, asking us our status for when we are getting out of hosting Zoom accounts. Because we've been supposed to be done with that since October. And they're like, come on, folks. And we keep pushing it off and pushing it off. But we're looking end of February, beginning of March, and we'll have to end up finally doing something with it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Very nice. Other questions about the whole Zoom account thing? Does it make sense why we have to get out of it? I mean, that's not what anybody wants to hear, but does it make sense why we have to? Okay.
No.
Agreeing is one thing, understanding is a second. Those are two different.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree also, but I understand that I'd really rather not have the constant emails and sure, we're doing that. That's not really the right thing to do for us. All right, moving on. How many of you have a financial report that you provide to your club that you give either at a regular meeting basis or you provide at the executive council meeting? I've seen it done both ways. There's no really one best way to do that. I see a couple of you with hands raised. How do you do that? What do you provide? What do you share? Maxine, I saw your hand up first. Why don't we start with Maxine and then go to David? You're still muted, Maxine.
Okay, yes, I start out, just give the treasurer's report, give the beginning balance, show all the checks, the disbursements that I made, all the receipts, and give the closing balance at the end.
Very nice. David, what do you do?
I usually just do, I give the balances and I do a P&L statement and a cash flow statement.
Do you do it for executive meeting or for every club meeting?
Executive meeting. We don't typically do that at our club meetings.
Okay, very cool. Ed, I saw you raise your hand at one point there also. You're muted though.
I do the same thing at the executive meetings.
Okay, very good.
I'll communicate with all the officers and everybody
Very
knows
cool.
where we are, and then I'll convey at the club meeting where we are.
Just a synopsis.
Yep.
Perfect.
Keep it simple.
There's no one right way. There's no one right way that everyone is supposed to do. The goal, though, is to make sure that you're giving something to, at minimum, your club officers so that the club knows where you are in terms of liquidity, in terms of funds. They know what's sort of happening there. You're sharing with them the statements so that there's some sort of check and balance system that we know what's happening within clubs. It doesn't have to happen at every club meeting. There are a lot of clubs out there that's just the way that they've always operated. That's perfectly fine. I'm not encouraging you to change that. Find the one that works for you. It depends on what works best within your club, within your culture, and what you're trying to get out of the club process as a whole. Both of them are perfectly fine, but do something. How many of you don't do anything when it comes to giving financial reports to your club? And it's okay if you don't. I saw Thomas's hand go up, a couple of hands go up. So I would suggest at minimum, If you're not currently doing something, at minimum, prepare something for your executive board meetings, for your when all of your officers get together, your executive committees get together. If you do that at minimum, it kind of takes care of there being of ensuring there's transparency in what is happening, and there's no concern that any kind of funny business is going on with what's happening with club funds. Rodney.
I don't know if this is a good question or not, but does clubs also have funds at Toastmasters International that we can access from our dues that we've paid, or is it just what we've put in our own accounts?
The money that goes to Toastmasters International, there is some of that money that comes back in reserves to the district. And then we disperse some of that money back to area directors, division directors for contests, for different events that are happening. But there's no money that comes back to clubs for the dues that are paid to TI. The only money that clubs get is if you have an actual club due on top of your Toastmasters International dues. And every club is a little bit different for what that looks like. There are some clubs that have a lot more in terms of costs, depending upon where they meet, and they collect more money. Some don't collect anything at all. There's a lot of clubs I know that have stopped collecting right now because they're not meeting anywhere and they had no cost to incur and they had money left over. So it's completely up to you to however you want to do that, but there's no money that comes back from TI directly to the clubs.
The reason for the question, I've been in some conferences before meetings where I volunteered that we pay half our members' dues if they're a student at Purdue University or Ivy Tech, something like that. And everybody says, no, you can't do that.
Correct.
Well, you can do that if it's your own money, but that's why I wonder if we had any funds at Toastmasters International. So
you can, as a club, set up a scholarship fund. You can't go out and just pay somebody else's dues, but you can set up a scholarship fund. The reason why Toastmasters doesn't want you to just pay somebody else's dues is because clubs get rewarded based upon membership also. So in order to qualify for DCP goals, you have to have a certain threshold of either members or new members in there. And if you have members that are just randomly paying, they're getting rewarded and earning things fraudulently. I don't know why that was such a big deal because they're still getting the money and whatever. But for TI, it's a really, really big deal. And they've had some significant backlash over the years with that. Probably part of it is because of their not-for-profit status. But you can set up scholarship funds within your club for members that have trouble paying, like students or anybody that's lost jobs or whatever the reason is they might have. Matt.
I have a question. Is there a recommendation for clubs to carry a certain balance in their accounts? Our club tends to kind of spend about as much as we bring in, but we have a balance of around a few $100s or however. I didn't know if there was like a dollar amount that TI recommended.
Every club's different. Every club has different expenses, has different obligations. There's no one right way. Most clubs carry a couple $100. The goal shouldn't be to have thousands of dollars floating around for your club because we do have a not-for-profit status. If you have thousands of bucks floating around for your club, you should be investing back into the members of your club. A couple $100 seems to be normal everywhere that I've been in the past decade or so, all the clubs I've been in. If you keep more than that, you probably want to look at reducing that in some sort of a way. Tracy, I saw you come back off of mute. Okay, never mind. All right, so other questions about funds? Does all make sense? Thumbs up if we're good here. Fantastic.
Did you say something? This is Tracy again.
Yeah, I saw you come off of mute, and I asked if you had a question.
Well, no, not really. I believe at this point I'm trying to find my way. I think this is actually the first treasurer training I've been to. This is my second year as treasurer, and the first year I was sort of thrown into the position because the person that had it before me had to leave suddenly, and then we get into coronavirus, and so I'm glad to be receiving the training today, but unfortunately I'm one of those people who falls into the category of really not having a system set up to present to the other club officers as far as current balances and so forth.
Okay.
So I'm definitely getting information on that as I'm
That's fine.
listening.
Yeah, no big deal. I just saw you come off of mute. That's the only reason I called on you was for no
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Okay. All right. So one other huge change we've had in COVID. For those of you that switched over club officers and you switched over treasurers at the beginning of the year, how many of you went to the banks and got your signing card changed? How many of you know that there is a card at the bank that you need to get changed once in a while for who has access to your accounts? Very good. All right, most hands went up there. So if you're brand new, there is a card at your bank. There's a signature card that grants access to your accounts. When you change club presidents, which should be annually, you shouldn't have club presidents that run for more than 1 year consecutively. Create a job description for the job. The way when someone succeeds, they'll have a roadmap. If you look at there are manuals out there, Ed, that really give a really nice rundown. Maybe that wasn't Ed that I saw in there. Whoever that was, that just put that in the chat. There is a manual out there that is kind of a job description also. So for the signing card though, make sure that you're getting a hold of your bank. When we were changing over signing cards for the district and also for clubs that I'm in, where I'm treasurer of 2 clubs here, it took us about a month in order to get appointments at banks to be able to go in and sign because nobody could all go in together because of COVID. We had to all be separate to go in one at a time. So you had one go in and then next week somebody else would go in and then we missed a week and then somebody else went in. So make sure that you have the right folks that are on the signature card that have access to your accounts, that have the credit card, the debit cards for your accounts, or if you have a credit card for your accounts, make sure that changes at least annually so that it's transitioning between treasurers and it's also transitioning when you have a new club president come in, even if the rest of the officers are staying the same. Rodney, I saw you unmute yourself also.
Just for your information, we've gone through this over the last year or so, changing treasurers completely. We also had to provide the bylaws. We also had to provide minutes of the meeting showing where the treasurer was officially elected by the membership. So you take that along with you to fill out the form. And then the secretary has to also sign the form in addition to the president, in addition to the treasurer. It's quite the state law has changed in the last year on that.
Yes. And they're a little bit different in Kentucky than what they are in Indiana also. So if you're in one of the Indiana clubs, it's a little bit different for Indiana clubs than what it is for Kentucky clubs. But you're absolutely right, Rodney. That's why you have to have multiple people going to sign because there's different accesses and you do have to have that important information. Who knows where to get your bylaws from?
I just wanted to make a comment to what we did with our club is that I'm the treasurer. So we went in and the past treasurer went with me, but we have another person that's a signer in case something should happen and they can, make sure that the account's protected. However, and what we did with the debit cards was we did get individual sign-in and individual debit cards so that we could track who would be doing what with the club. So.
Yep, perfectly fine to do that. Just make sure that you're changing them on at least an annual basis. Ed, there was some stuff you put in the chat. I missed the second one when it popped up. What was your question? I know the second thing I thought you said about individual clubs, maybe
Yeah, no, it wasn't about it was basically to the question about how do you, when you come into the job new, how do you make sure you know what you need to do? Now, Toastmasters International has a role for treasurer and it gives you some general guidelines there. But each specific club has its own way of operating. Because when you are treasurer, the membership chair may collect new membership applications, but they don't deposit the money. It goes to the treasurer. So the treasurer may have more of a role than just maintaining the funds. There's a unique line of communication set up between the other officers where there are some shared responsibilities. And if you have a job description, like for the treasurer's role, I have a job description that I wrote up when I inherited the job from somebody else because I didn't know what I was going to have to do. So I wrote it up as I went along, as I learned a little bit more. I developed the job description, which is a green document, which can always be modified in some way, shape, or form if roles change or if someone needs to do something a little bit different.
Absolutely.
So we
There are a
protect-
number of clubs out there that do that. That is a wonderful practice. I love when I hear clubs that have some sort of knowledge management formality so that new officers coming in have an idea of what their role is within that specific club. That is a wonderful idea, Ed. Thank you so very much. How many of you know where your bylaws are kept? It's on a single hand that goes up here. So how many of you have been to Toastmasters International website at some point? Hope every person here, because that's where you have to go pay dues. So on your club's website, I think it's in the bottom right corner of all of the data for your club is a tab for your club bylaws. There's a couple of things in there that you need to print that out when you're going to go to the bank. There's a couple of things, other important pieces in there that you need to make sure that everyone knows how to find that. It also tells how often your club meets and how your club meets. We've all changed how we met this year for the most part, right? Not many of us are meeting the exact same way now that we met 13 months ago. Things have changed. Your bylaws are a great place. If you're going to go hybrid, make sure that that gets changed. If you're going to change the frequency of your meetings, maybe you went from weekly to every other week, make sure that that gets changed in there as well. It helps keep everything. There are some legalities when it comes to our status as not-for-profits that we have to keep those documents updated on a regular basis. So I encourage you to talk to your club secretary, your club president, bring it up at your next executive council meeting for your club so that they know where to find that document. It's Toastmasters International. To the very bottom right corner, there's a place there for your bylaws. Look that up. It's boring to read, but it's important to have, just important to know where it is. So I'll talk one more thing about Toastmasters International before we get off this topic. There is, how many of you would love it if people besides club officers could just pay their dues online? How many of you think that would be helpful to you if your members could pay dues online?
It would, with the exception of the actual club dues.
Correct. So there is significant talk, and from what it sounds like, it's going to happen at the change of the Toastmasters year in June. That for next Toastmasters year, it certainly sounds like all members are going to be able to pay Toastmasters International themselves. I just saw Ed do a little shimmy, like, ooh, it just sent a chill down my spine. There are some really positive things with that, and also some kind of negative things with that also. It's going to take a lot more follow-up. If you're not the one who's getting the money and then paying, you have to make sure you know who's going in and paying because you don't physically get it to know when it actually happens. So the process will change a little bit, but the payment will become a little bit less of a headache. And then all of our conversations we started with about Venmo and that sort of stuff will probably end up going away. They're doing it because, so the reason why they haven't done this in the past is really because of server capacity is the #1 reason. If you are an area director or division director and you ever have to go in to do area director reports at the end of the time period, you know that getting in there is just blind. You have as much chance of winning a lotto as what you do of getting into the Toastmasters International website first try when everyone's trying to get in. And that's just with area directors, division directors. They needed to expand the capacity of our servers so that every member could get in, because how many of us have members that pay on the very last days? Everybody should have their hand up. We all know those people. They go in and they pay 3 days before the end, 2 days before the end, and that's going to crash servers like crazy. They've expanded when they moved to Denver, they started upgrading their servers and expanding their servers. And that's why we believe this is going to happen this year, beginning in Toastmasters year. So that should be an exciting thing for all treasurers, that the process of collecting money and moving money and having to figure out Venmo or having to figure out bill pay should be reduced significantly when members can pay their own stuff. You're going to have to just make sure that you have a way of collecting club dues, because that will still be separate from paying Toastmasters dues. It will also take out a lot of the headache with figuring out the prorated amounts to what month is, do we pay $6 less, and what month do we pay $12 less, and all of that. It'll make that process just a little bit easier for everybody as well. It'll be automated. So that's kind of interesting. That's kind of fun information to be able to give out. And I'm certainly looking forward to that. Even though I'm not a club treasurer in a lot of clubs, I'm in enough clubs that that will be a fun thing to be able to do. Budgets. This is the other thing that I think is incredibly important for everybody. Budgets. How many of you, if you're not doing reports, how many of you have a budget for how much you can spend in a year? A few of you. And David, it sounded like you had a cash flow statement. I have a feeling that you might be an accountant or a financial planner by trade, just from the way you were talking about. No?
No,
Okay.
I do IT and I do real estate. Nothing to do with any of that. I just kind of fell into this.
Fair enough. For those of you that don't have budgets, and yes, they'll be able to pay by credit card. That's what they're going to, is to be able to pay credit card through Toastmasters. That's a question that's in chat from Ed. So they can use their own credit card or debit card and pay online. Hopefully starting this coming year is what it sounds like. So budgets are very important because of a couple of reasons. It is very easy when you are trying to do something new to spend too much money in trying to get that out there and not realizing what you actually have in the bank. Sometimes the information that you get from a predecessor is either incomplete, it might be outdated, it could just be wrong. And we'll come back to your question because I don't understand it. So knowing what you have in your funds, very important, but being able to budget throughout the year of knowing what you're going to spend when, even more important. If you only have a dollar amount and you don't know what you're going to do with that dollar amount, make sure there's a way to reinvest your funds that you're collecting for your club back into your club. So it's not just that you're collecting money to hold on to it for your members for no apparent reason. Give them a reason why you're collecting it, how you're spending it, what the benefit is to all of them, and have a budget for what you're going to do with that. It keeps you from overspending, and it also forces you to spend to go back, to have benefits to go back to members. And there are certainly some things that every club needs and every club can use, why they collect money in the first place. Lecterns aren't free unless you happen to know somebody who's a woodworker. That we generally have to buy lecterns. We often have to buy timing lights when we meet in person. We have to buy our banners, and the ribbons that we get for them, we need someone to adhere them to the banners, which I hope that that's a practice that most clubs are using, is to keep those ribbons you get from Toastmasters International and put them onto the banners as kind of a nice celebratory reminder of what you did that was great with DCP points or who got what for your within the area and division. Great way to be able to help build loyalty and engagement for clubs. So have a budget. How many of you, if you have a budget, how do you set up your budget and what do you do with that money for the budget?
I'd originally done it in QuickBooks and then reported against it. But when I moved away from that, I just moved it to a spreadsheet and basically went off what I had before.
So you just used Excel?
Yeah.
Yep. It can really be that easy. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just have something so that you know what you're doing with the money that you're collecting, so there's benefit back to all of your members as well. Ed, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, the question, the thing that I had when you mentioned about paying directly to Toastmasters International, one of the things that you find is that every transaction that you have with a credit card incurs a fee. It's a transaction fee for each one and all this other stuff. When I collect the dues for our club, I usually do it in 2 transactions. We have 30 to 40 members. And so I'll do one with 20 members, another one with 20 members, and that's 2 transactions. Now, if TMI is going to be taking credit cards from every member that they have worldwide, isn't that going to increase their costs overall because they're having all these transaction fees? And won't that be passed on to the individual clubs eventually?
I think it was great that they told us that they're going to go to the payment process. You're getting way ahead of the information that has been disseminated.
Okay.
So yes, there will be a fee. I don't know how that's going to be shared. Who's going to pay for that? No idea how that's going to work. Let's revel in the moment for just for a second of knowing that we'll be out of the business of collecting everyone's credit card information, which will be a positive part for us. I don't know the details behind it. That'll all be coming out sometime in the spring here. When we find that, we'll certainly pass it on. I don't want to speculate because I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay. I just figured.
Fair enough. Good question, though. Very good question. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left here. What other questions did we not cover that you would like to know, that you would like to share with others that has worked for you as a treasurer, things that you would like to know about?
Common to do a yearly audit, or I know we do a yearly audit, but I wasn't sure if it was common in other clubs.
How many of you do yearly audits? It's a great question.
Isn't that recommended by International?
It is recommended by International, but it's not something that I've seen happen very often in clubs because we're volunteers and we have lives outside of here. It doesn't happen often. Should it happen? Probably not a bad idea one bit. If you have the wherewithal to do that, I recommend at least doing some sort of a reconciliation.
Yeah.
If it's not a full audit, just at least a reconciliation of your accounts on a regular basis so you know where you stand.
Yeah,
So
we do
David,
that when we present it to the executive committee.
Very good. Fantastic. Matt.
who actually
A
conducts
few
the-
years ago, whenever our club needed to, I was the president. We had a panel of 2 members to simply audit the treasurer's records at the end of their term. Nothing personal, just because we hadn't done that for many years. And fortunately, our treasurer was astute and everything worked out fine. But there's really nothing more than just adding, subtracting, and seeing what went in and came out.
Very cool. It is very helpful. We transitioned a club here in Fort Wayne from a regular club to a specialty club. We had all of our members that were in an advanced club here for one reason or another. Most of them left. We ended up becoming Fort Wayne storytellers. When we transitioned the accounts over, there were checks that hadn't been deposited for years. That people had been giving our treasurer checks, and there were some checks that were 3 and 4 years old, clearly not good anymore, that she was still carrying around with her in a billfold with the checkbook that had never been deposited, and that sort of a thing. If you do an audit on a regular basis, you'll find that stuff a little bit more regularly though than when a club folds. Probably a good thing to do. Well, I thank all of you. Was this helpful for anybody out there tonight? Did y'all learn something?
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes, no
what
problem.
about taxes? Does each club have to file anything with the IRS?
Nope, clubs do not have to file with the IRS. That is purely Toastmasters International. Clubs do not need to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. What else? What other questions are out there that we can answer for in the last couple minutes here? Jerry.
Some of the limitations that Toastmaster places on us on how we spend our money, what we're allowed to spend it for, what we're not allowed to spend it for. Where could I find that?
Some of the I know it's on the Toastmasters International website. I'm not sure exactly where. I would have to dig around to find that on there. But I can certainly I can ask the question to find it and send that out to all of you because I don't know exactly where that is.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. What else? I saw there was one more question that came in the chat here. If club members will be able to pay their own dues starting in June, would treasurers still be responsible for entering their membership details? Depends on the club. Sometimes club secretaries enter membership details. Sometimes VPMs do. It depends on your club. Every club is a little bit different. Do the thing that's right for your club. I'm not going to say that there is one right way. The end result is much more important than how we get to that end result. So for your club, maybe not. I don't know that.
Interesting question, and that would relate to new members because each club needs to maintain the application for the new member.
Correct.
If they're paying Toastmasters International directly, you know, do they send them the membership form, or do we make?
No, because of tax laws out there and some requirements, you would still get the application. Then instead of collecting the check at the end of the application, they would just go online to do that themselves, but you would still get the application from the member themselves.
Okay.
So those still two separate processes. Right now, they're linked together. They would just be uncoupled. Very good
Yeah, in
question.
that regard, when it comes down to the whole collection, we collect club dues. To me, it sounds like it's to be easier just to stick with the old way.
It depends. There are a number. If you're not a really good treasurer, the process we have in place it can be incredibly convoluted. Remember that we are an international organization. There's a lot of different rules out there for a lot of different countries and how we do a lot of different things. They're trying to streamline it so that they can make sure that we're doing the right things for them and for clubs. Well, I thank you all for being here tonight. I thank you very much for being here tonight. If you've not already done so, please take a moment and enter into the chat feature your name, your club's name, not your club number, but your club's name. So your name, your club's name, and the role and/or roles that you hold within your club. And that is how I will fill out the spreadsheets to give you all credit for coming to training. I'll be doing that tomorrow to enter that into TI. So your name, your club's name, and the role and/or roles that you hold. Just send that to me in chat and we will get you all set up with all of your trainings.
And Scott, you said you've got mine, correct?
Yes, I did. Yep. Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Metro Motivators. Thank you very much.
Just a quick thought for those of us that have international members, being
Yes.
able to pay themselves with credit card is certainly a big advantage.
Yeah. Yes, especially it comes at a great time with so many of us having hybrid clubs and a lot of us having members now from locations outside of our hometowns. It is more common than uncommon to have members that don't live where you live. So yes, Rodney, absolutely. I'm going to hit stop record here. Just something that I forget to do once in a while.